the longer term ambitious planning as well. So people expect when you have election periods that there are baubles contained in a manifesto. They understand that, but what also impressed me was the sort of seismic shift. For example, the National Infrastructure Academy. We know the benefits of infrastructure investment can have in the wider economy, and the fact that these are longer term ambitious things, obviously the additional money for the Scottish National Investment Bank, I view them very, very positively, and perhaps even more positively than short-term funding. It's showing that these are things that are going to continue to grow. And I personally was very pleased to see about the National Infrastructure Academy. And I wonder, was that deliberate to have this kind of mishmash of short-term and long-term, because we are laying foundations, economic foundations?
We've always done that as a government. Now, remember, I mean, in terms of being in government, I myself, Nicola Sturgeon and John Swinney are the only ones that are still at the cabinet table, that were at the cabinet table continuously since 2007. And in 2007, we thought we would be in 6 days or 6 weeks. We didn't know how long we would be in, but we set out to have long-term ambitions, even though even at that point, everybody was out to get us and to try and undermine us. So we've always taken a position right through that part of our responsibility to address that unrealised potential of Scotland is not just about short-termism, because I think that's a problem of many governments in many countries that can hold things back, and I think it was in the early days of devolution. But they work, and this is steady work, not just from Michael Matheson as the lead and as the Cabinet Secretary for Infrastructure, but as Economy Secretary, I was as involved in that, as was Rosanna Cunningham from the climate change aspect. So it's integrated view as to how do we make sure from a green jobs point of view, we have the infrastructure ambition, but also in terms of the funding support for that, and indeed the plans and the areas that we can invest in. So the housing aspects is fundamental, 100,000 new houses, but it's got to be integrated to that energy efficiency in terms of the low carbon aspects. And in terms of what we can do here in Linlithgow, there's a real ambition within this town where I live to make sure we can become a net zero town, and that means tackling retrofitting as well. Now, there's no reason in terms of heat pumps. We've got one of the biggest heat pumps manufacturers, for example, Mitsubishi, here in West Lothian. How do we integrate the supply chain and the supply chain, and then the delivery and the jobs, particularly for young people, have that in the seamless point of view? So the National Infrastructure Mission doesn't stand on its own. It's part of that delivery right across the different areas. But we know from an economic point of view, the more you invest in infrastructure, you do get the economic gain. So that is why there has been a particular emphasis on capital funding for that National Infrastructure Mission. And the Scottish National Investment Bank that I've been involved in the last year, again, is mission based. It is tackling some of the environmental aspects, but again, we know there's private investment that's available on the green agenda. So therefore, how does it make sure we can facilitate that, but not necessarily displace it, tackle some of the place agenda and the inequalities? So they're going to have some very interesting projects. But again, a lot of that is long-term patient capital, which quite often you don't get in governments that want to put up shiny immediate things that don't necessarily help the impact of what we need to do over the longer term.